Raghavsree. I hail from India. I am an aspiring final year dental student driven by passion, a poet by choice, an artist born from a hobby, and a blogger under a voice to be heard. Today I'm here on the behalf of Teen Pop Magazine, the Teen Pop Magazine, which is the first online magazine for high schoolers that gives young, aspiring journalists the opportunity to share their voice, build their writing portfolio, and receive peer feedback and mentorship in the editorial industry. If you would like to write for them, do check their website out www.theteenpopmagazine.com. Today, I am in conversation with the multiple times TEDx speaker by the age of 18 years old, young published novelist from Kanpur, youth mentor Yash Tiwari. As a young public speaker and youth mentor, Yash is frequently invited to deliver international and national talks and sessions in various schools, colleges, events, and seminars. He has delivered TEDx talks in various states all around the nation like Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, Jammu, Karnataka, etc. He has delivered Josh Talks, which has more than 250,000 views. He has wrote an international acclaimed and awarded debut novel, Celebration in Tribulation, written at the age of 16. First, I would like to congratulate Yash on behalf of Teen Pop Magazine for being awarded with the prestigious India Book of Records for being the youngest author to write a fiction novel on coronavirus outbreak, pandemic 2020, rise of the virus. Let's jump straight into the interview. How are you doing today, Yash?
I'm doing great and very excited for our interview ahead.
Thank you. I'm so glad. How do you believe your current role in life is contributing to humanity?
So I believe that the kind of work which I'm caught up in right now, be it public speaking or literature, the kind of sessions and talks and workshops that I deliver, all of them have a great deal of impact, not just on the people around me, but on the youngsters, on the people from all walks of life and all generations, all around the world. Because
You're
that is
quite
in fact the motto with which I work as well.
you're quite the role model, I see. What
Thank you so
inspired
much. Thank you. That really means a lot.
the pleasure's mine? What inspired you to write your recent novel and how long did it take you?
Okay, so this is a very exciting question for me because I'm always very eager to speak about my latest novel, that is Pandemic 2020 Rife of the Virus, which is not just my second novel at the age of 18, but it is also world's first fiction novel based on the coronavirus outbreak, for which I have been awarded by the India Book of Records, like you just said, but also been awarded by the International Asia Book of Records for the same title, for being the youngest author to write a fiction novel on COVID-19 outbreak. So the motivation behind writing this book came to me back in the month of April, when every day, whenever I opened the news, there was some or the other story about the atrocities and privations being suffered by the COVID-19 warriors, the frontline workers, the medical workers, the poor people, and even those who are stranded in other countries because of the international lockdowns. So all of that truly compelled me to pay my part of tribute to all these warriors as well as the sufferers of COVID-19 who did not even make it out of the outbreak which we have been suffering from and have been impacted by in the past few months. So I decided that being an author, even if I'm just 18 years old, the best way for me to pay a tribute to all these warriors of COVID-19 would be to write a book based on them. So I started writing my novel, Pandemic 2020 Rife of the Virus, and apparently within a record time of just 1 month, in less than 30 days actually, I was able to write the entire 320 pages novel. So that is how long it truly took me to write the book.
It's quite amazing how you did it at such a young age, and that to a topic that bringing out light into hidden stories that we most often forget in this fast, so-called fast life. It's quite
That
amazing
is
what
so
you did,
right.
and I love the initiative. And let's go on to
Thank
the
you so
next
much.
question.
Thank you.
What are the challenges did you face while writing the book?
Okay, so one of the most major challenge according to me while writing Pandemic 2020 in specific would be, I mean, I have to be very honest about it. even after being a motivational speaker and a public speaker since I guess the past 2 years, I have been professionally working in this field for the past 2 years. So, because I'm professionally caught up in the field of inspiring others and motivating others, I try to keep myself as much optimistic and motivated as well. But then again, when I was researching about the pains and the suffering of people from all around the world during this COVID-19 outbreak, and I was in fact writing it down as it was unfolding in the real world, I have to say, to some degree, it was even traumatizing for me as someone who professionally motivates others. So that was definitely a major challenge which I faced, because just imagine that I'm finishing off a 320 pages worth novel within 1 month. So of course I have to write a lot about it every day. And then every day in the month of April, things were updating. Every other day, some or the other story of, we can say, sufferings or privation were coming from all around the world. So that was even taking a toll on my own head to write down such a story, which of course is not all bright and butterflies. Because when we are talking about something as hazardous as coronavirus outbreak, I cannot say that the entire story is just bright or it is just optimistic. We have seen thousands of deaths happening every day during this COVID-19 outbreak. So that is something which I did not shy away from. So I had to research a great deal about it as well. So that was definitely taking a toll on my own mind. But then again, as I said, because I deliver these international talks, sessions, and workshops on the topic of self introspection, on motivation, and on looking on the bright side of everything. Since I was doing that every day, every other day, I was invited for such an event or a talk. So it was kind of like a roller coaster ride for me. In the daytime, I was, motivating everybody. So even my mind was very jolly and very happy. At night, I was writing these kind of pessimistic and kind of saddening stories. So for me, it was like a complete roller coaster ride 24/7. But definitely, I wouldn't say that that was a hardship in particular. It was an experience which I enriched myself a lot from, and I even got to learn a lot from. Because, see, as I said, I'm just 18 years old, and I have a lot to explore right now, especially in the field of writing and literature, I would say. So that 1 month of writing Pandemic 2020, it did make me understand how diverse this field can be and how impacting it can be, not just on the minds of the readers. Like, if you are reading the novel, of course it is going to impact your mind. But even for me to write about all of that, it did have a great deal of impact on me. So I think that would be one of the lessons which I learned from my month-long journey of writing Pandemic 2020 as well.
Bravo to you for finally overcoming it and able to write it down on paper. Bravo.
Thank you.
You wrote your debut novel, The Celebration in Tribulation, when you were just 16 years old. How does it
Yeah.
feel like to accomplish so much at such a young age?
So this is one question I have to say, like every interview which I deliver, this is one question which always comes up, that, how does it feel to be delivering all these TED Talks at the age of 18, or perhaps writing your debut novel when you were just 16 years old? And when we talk about all these achievements, be it my international record which I have set for my second novel, or the international TED Talks, or all the works which I'm doing right now, or addressing thousands of youngsters every day, not just here in India, but even around the world. This is not something which I only consider as an accomplishment for me. I rather consider all of these achievements and all of these, I would say, success stories in my own life as a reminder for myself. A reminder that sounds of like an alarm 24/7 in my mind that, Yash, there is a long road ahead of you. If at the age of 18 you have done all of this, then trust me, there is a lot that you still have to do. You have a long road ahead of you, you have a long life ahead of you. So if you are saying that right now you are impacting thousands of youngsters every day, it should keep on trebling every other day. Then the journey goes on from here. These achievements are not something that you should sit down with. These achievements are something that you should keep yourself reminded about, that there is so much more to be done, and you have the potential, you have the voice for it. So why not use it every day? So for me, like all of these things which I'm doing, be it my internationally acclaimed novels or the talks which I deliver, they're just a reminder about the fact that I do have the clarity of thoughts in my mind. I do have a voice that is creating an impact. So I need to utilize it to the best of my ability for the betterment of the world, for truly creating a social impact on the world and bringing about a social change, especially for my fellow youngsters. So that is what all of these achievements are truly all about for me.
I love the way you invested in yourself and also inspiring and motivating so many others. It's
Thank you.
quite the
Thank you
thought,
so
and
much.
I hope you achieve more.
Thank you. Thank you.
When did you first realize you wanted to write a book?
Okay, so I'll be very honest with you. I have been in the field of literature since as long as I can remember. I mean, when I was just 6 or 7 years old, maybe, I used to write a lot, many short poetries or stories or stuff like that. And my parents used to upload that on an online blog. So you can understand that the seeds of being a literature enthusiast and a writer were sown within me like at a very young age, at a very early phase of my life. But the wings that my journey as being an acclaimed author or as being a writer truly, I would say, started when I was 16 years old, 2 years back. And I had this 22 days holiday period between the end of my class 11th and the beginning of my class 12th. And all of us know how hectic the 12th boards examinations are. We have the boards, and even parents are like, you are not supposed to do anything else for the remaining year, just focus on your boards. And then again, I was being elected as the head boy of my school, so like the pressure was sky high on me. But then I thought to myself that if such a hectic journey is about to begin in just 22 days and I have this holiday period before the beginning of my class 12, then why don't I invest those 22 days in writing something, in creating a narrative or starting a project in the field of literature, which I have always been passionate about. So I started digging up various topics online. I started researching about ailments and diseases, which never had been the focus of any fiction novel in particular, because that is what I was interested about. And when I researched about it, I came across this particular ailment called the CJD disease or the Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, which is a neurological ailment that even most of the people are not even aware about, but it is killing like thousands of people every year and it still doesn't have a cure. So that kind of intrigued me, and that also intrigued me to write a very elaborate narrative based on it, which is fictional. And I just started writing because I was interested in it. So I just gave it a go. I took my first step and started writing the first page of my debut novel. And like as destiny would have it, or whatever it might be, I was able to write the entire novel, my first debut novel, at the age of 16 within a record time of just 22 days. That is the truth. I'm not making this up right now. And I mean, even I was very much, I would say, elated about the fact, because this wasn't something which I primarily was working towards. It wasn't as if when I was writing my debut novel, I had this deadline in my mind that I have to write it within 22 days. Or even with my second novel, Pandemic 2020, it wasn't as if at all that I have to finish the entire novel within just 1 month. It was simply the time that I naturally took to write these novels. Why, you may ask? Because I mean, people even take decades upon decades to write their novels. For me, it has always been about getting completely invested into the project which I'm working upon. Like if I'm writing, let's say, my second novel only, Pandemic 2020, I kind of lose the sight of the world around me. And like a lot many people binge watch series on Netflix, right? I binge write. That is the kind of habit which I have towards this passion, which I really have within me. So that is what happened with my debut novel as well. I got so much invested towards it that I was able to finish it off within just 22 days. And the rest is history.
You have written quite the story, and at such a limited time, you managed to do it. Yes, what can I say? I'm speechless.
Thank you. Thank you.
How's your experience so far from being a motivational speaker to now as an author?
So it has actually been the other way around for me. I started with being an author, and then I guess I entered the field of public speaking and motivational speaking. So in fact, it was exactly like the fact that my debut novel got released, A Celebration in Tribulation, and because I had written it at the age of 16, because it was within the record time of just 22 days, and most importantly, because it was world's first fiction novel based on the Jacob disease, it started to garnish a lot of international as well as national acclaim from the press, from the media, and from various platforms. So, just like I believe after 6 or 7 months, I was invited for my first TED talk. And I was 17 years old when I delivered my first TED talk at TEDx HBTU. And a very fun fact, my first TED talk was in fact scheduled right in between of my two boards examination. So I had like my chemistry exam, then on the other day I had my TED talk, and then on the next day or like a couple of days after that, I had my physics boards exam. So you can understand how memorable of that time period might have been for me. But anyway, so yeah, once that talk was delivered, I had delivered my first TED talk, which all of us know there is no platform bigger than the platform of TEDx in the entire world when it comes to delivering those thought-provoking speeches. So for me, at the age of 17, delivering a talk at the platform of TED was in itself like a huge honor and something which I genuinely myself felt elated about, felt surprised about, and even felt inspired about. But more than that, what happened right after that talk was up on the platform was something which kind of framed the journey which I am living on right now. So basically, once the talk was released by TEDx, I started to, receive this international acclaim and appreciation, and even I would say messages from all around the world about the fact that how everybody is feeling very inspired by just that 17 minutes talk which I had delivered about my own life, psychology, and various other things at the age of 17. And most of the people were not even, concerned about the fact that I'm just 17 years old. All of them were genuinely surprised and even very much inspired by the message which I delivered in that particular talk. So when I understood that if I can create such a global impact with just that 17 minutes talk, then why don't I utilize my voice and my clarity of thoughts for a greater good, for I can say perhaps a greater impact on the society? And that is when I decided to venture into the field of being an international youth mentor and a public speaker and even a motivational speaker. And since then, I have delivered 4 TED Talks. I have delivered a Josh Talk, which has received somewhere around 3,20,000 views, if I'm not mistaken. And I very frequently deliver international talks, sessions, workshops, seminars, and stuff like that, which are primarily about how to understand yourself better, how to know yourself better, how to become, I would say, the best version of yourself to the best of your ability, and how to understand who you truly are. Because I believe that in the world of today, all of us have great opinions on the world around us, but we do not know much about the world within us. So that is what my talks and sessions primarily deal with as well. And I'm always there for my fellow youngsters to inspire them and to motivate them. So that is how my journey as being an acclaimed author translated itself into the journey of now being an international youth mentor for me.
You have made such a difference, and you have such a unique voice. I have seen that video, couple of I think 2 of your TED Talks videos, and it's quite, you have a very unique voice, I have to say, for that, for
Thank
sure.
you. In a good way or in a bad way? You have to specify that.
That's very bad.
Okay.
um, uh, can we go into the next question?
Sure.
What's your upcoming project?
Okay, so my upcoming project, that is, I would say, a very interesting question to ask, because I kind of do not reveal much about my upcoming projects like just one day before it even. But
Okay, very
when it
secretive.
comes to very secretive, I mean, for both of my novels, even my own family was not aware that I was writing these novels. Like I remember that when I had written my first one, because I mean, of course, the youngsters of today, they are 24/7 on their laptops anyway. So why would the parents suspect anything else from that, right? So I was also like that for an entire month. And then one day, you wouldn't believe it. Like coincidentally, it was at 12 a.m., like just at midnight. And I woke my parents up that I have written my first novel. And they were like, what? You were doing that for the past 1 month? So that was a very interesting thing for me. And that is how I work on all of my projects as well. Like telling people right when it is completed and not before that. But still, just to give an idea of what kind of things I'm thinking to work on in future, Well, firstly, of course, right now my focus is entirely on pandemic 2020, rise of the virus, and reaching out to people all around the world as much as I can regarding it. Because, of course, this story is one that is not just my story or your story. It is one that each and every person will be able to connect with as well as relate with. Because all of us have suffered from COVID-19, so you are going to find something or the other that you will be able to visualize yourself in. So that is my primary aim right now, even for the upcoming months, to reach out to as many people with Pandemic 2020 Rise of the Virus novel as much as I can. But beyond that, when it comes to the future novels which I want to write, uh, definitely mental health is a topic which I am thinking about. I'm figuring out how to work around it, because this is one topic which I believe a lot many people get wrong when they are working upon projects related to this particular theme. Because all of us do know that we think that we are very expert when it comes to our mental health, our mind. We feel that we are like perhaps the greatest of speakers or writers when it comes to speaking about our own mind. And why wouldn't we be? Because the brain is inside us, so why wouldn't we be knowing about it? And I would say that is perhaps the greatest of folly that a person can make, the greatest of mistake that a person can come up with. Because there is so much in our mind, and there is so many dimensions to the topic of mental health that are still undiscovered, that are still undiscussed, and most importantly, that are still unacknowledged. So I'm working around it. I wouldn't say that I've already started writing about it, but I'm thinking of how to delve into that very serious topic. And another topic which I do have an inclination to write towards is perhaps domestic violence, and I would say assaults in general. Because I believe that we are talking about these topics right now. We have finally started to talk about them, but not enough when it comes to the youngsters in our world facing the assaults of any form. It can be like a verbal violence, or it can be physical violence as well, which we are reported about every other day in thousands upon thousands of numbers. My heart does pain. I would say, cry internally to see the things which especially the youngsters around the world are facing to some degree, even today, even in the globalized world that we are a part of, which prides upon itself to be so modernized. So that is another topic which I am thinking of writing about in future. Now, when it comes to my other projects, when it comes to public speaking and my talks, that is definitely something which I'm going to take to a greater notch in the coming future. I, in fact, have some TED Talks scheduled for, I would say, a very near future as well. But I'm not going to reveal much about that right now. You will have to stay tuned with me for more information on that. But yes, definitely whatever I do in future, public speaking and writing, like literature and youth mentorship, or just mentorship in general, they are going to be the foundation of it. I have made this decision in my life that even professionally, whatever I pursue, because of course, right now I'm just 18 years old, so I am very much in my educational sphere as well. I am figuring out if there is something which career wise I want to do apart from what I'm doing right now. But whatever it might be, public speaking and literature is something that I am going to continue for sure for the rest of my life, and have it as the foundation of everything that I do in future.
I can clearly see that you're very ambitious. And it's a very
Yeah,
good way, in a very good way I'm saying it. And your thoughts on writing about mental health and abuse. It's like something that everyone can connect to. Like through like every day-to-day life. Something we can connect to it. I think that's going to be your challenge, how you connect with it. I wish you all the best.
yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.
The pleasure's all mine. How many drafts should one writer produce before they publish a book?
That is a very subjective question, I must say, because there is no specific answer to it. Like with my novel, just like, for example, I'm just saying, with my novel, if I just took, let's say, 22 days to write the first one, or just 1 month to write the second one, am I preaching over here that you should also be writing your novel within 1 month? Of course not. That is not something which I preach at all. Like every month, I'm addressing and even mentoring for month-long workshops, 200 or even 300 people from all around the world, youngsters in particular, about the art of novel writing. And I always tell them on the very first session that you should not get into the process of writing until and unless you even have a proper outline of everything that you're going to write about. Just because your mentor has written a book in 1 month doesn't mean that you also have to do the same. So even the writing process, it can, we can say, have a very varied time period from person to person. It depends on whosoever is writing a story as well as the story that has been written. And that is also very much applicable on the editing and reviewing process as well. Because when we talk about the drafts, what is a draft in particular? First, we have to understand that. You cannot say that just because you have written a manuscript, it is all fine and you can send it out to the publishers. That first manuscript is only the first initial draft. You have to go through it. You have to understand what you have written. There might be a lot many storylines which right now, as the author, because you spent months upon months on writing that novel, you feel connected with, but you might have to cut off entirely. Like with my second novel, I remember I had to cut off nearly 80 to 90 pages worth of content. Just think about it. I mean, I'm already writing it all within 1 month, and even during that, like nearly 80 pages long content, I had to completely slash off. And it wasn't just, I would say, story, it was an entire storyline. Because in my novel, we have four storylines in particular: an ambitious journalist in India, a helpless doctor in the US, then a stranded traveler in the Italy, and a poor boy all the way in China. And initially, I had like a completely different idea in my mind about one of the storylines. And just imagine, I had written it entirely, it was on paper, and I completely slashed it off. I deleted it from my desktop because it did not feel right. So that is what happens with your drafts as well. If you just send the draft which you have written, the first one, to the publishers, I can assure you it is going to have a lot many errors. It is going to have a lot many things that could have been worked upon if you just went through it at least twice. So that is the number which I would suggest in generalized terms, though you can even take 10 terms or perhaps 20 times if you would like to review a draft that many times. That is totally up to you. But a suggestion from my side would be to definitely go through the draft which you have written at least 2 times. Why? Because first, when you have written it, the first time when you go through it, you will be making the initial set of changes, right? And then once you have made those initial major changes, the other time when you go through the draft once again, the second time, you will be able to see whether the changes are aligning very well with your initial idea or not. If they are not, you can make the changes once again. If they are, then well and good. You can give just one another trial if you'd like after a couple of days or perhaps after a couple of weeks, to go through the story from a fresh idea. Because like, let's say if you are writing a novel for 2 years and then you read it very thoroughly for 1 week, and then without any gap, once again you start reading it for 1 week, you are going to be blown off from here. You are yourself going to lose the complete interest from the novel that you have written. So give yourself some time. Once you have written it, let it sit for a couple of months, then go through it. Then once again, let it sit for a couple of weeks or so, and then go through it. So you will also have a fresh perspective about it, but at least do go through a draft 2 times for sure. So that would be my suggestion on this.
Thank you so much for elaborating on that. And I kind of get you on that point. I myself, I'm a blogger. So I also write the drafts and review it after a couple of days. So I think I'll
Yeah.
follow that from now onwards. Thank you for that. Um, do you know any publishing companies that invest in authors with no experience?
Yes, in fact, so many publishing companies do that right now. Almost all the self-publishing platforms that we talk about, I can assure you, they are not looking at your experience whatsoever. If you are willing to spend some bucks on the project which you have written, because of course, when you talk about self-publishing, they too charge you upfront for the book that they are going to get published for you. Self-publishing platforms are more or less like middlemen who simply get the manuscript which you have written published and marketed on the digital platform. So even the physical stores, that totally depends on the platform that you're going ahead with. But the major convenience with these self-publishing platforms is that they do not ask for any experience whatsoever. Like, of course, they will be checking whether you are a criminal or not, or whether you are, let's say, the right person to have a deal with or not. But apart from that, they are not going to look at whether you have written a book in past or not, or whether you are very proficient with what you are writing. They are mostly going to look at as a business deal to get the book published, because they are primarily focused on getting books published, as many as possible. Whereas for traditional publishers, whether we talk about Penguin or HarperCollins or Hachette, in the good way I'm saying this, they are very specific with whatever kind of novels they pick up. Even with the most experienced of writers, they might say a big no. Why? Because the kind of book that a certain person who has a lot of experience might have written, it might not fall very well with the criteria which these traditional publishing houses do have. So this is one thing which you need to keep in mind, that with traditional publishing houses, it is not just about your experience. It is, I would say, more so about the book that you have written. If the concept interests them, even with no experience at all whatsoever, they might have a deal with you. With self-publishing houses, you do not need to have any experience whatsoever. I am assuring you, you can get your novel published even on the digital platforms or even the physical format.
Okay, thank you for that. For you, what makes a great story?
For me, what truly makes a great story is not just about it being interesting or it being intriguing, but also about it being relatable and understandable, and most importantly, realistic. Like, for example, when you're watching a movie like, Iron Man, or let's say Batman, or any other fictional character whom you know is not going to climb on your walls in the real world, or is it not even possible in the real world for a person to, let's say, be on dragons or direwolves or stuff like that. But still, when Iron Man or Superman cries, you relate with them. You connect with their sorrows, you connect with their agony. When Harry Potter, let's say, feels dejected and feels sad about the death of his parents, even though he's a fictional character who has a magical wand in his hand, you still connect with him. Why? Because the character has been built up in a very, we can say, realistic manner. Even if there are interesting and intriguing fictional aspects connected with the story, the entire story is still built up on realistic and relatable dimensions. So, according to me, only those stories are really good and, I would say, understandable, which are not just interesting and intriguing for the readers to read about, but they are also realistic and relatable for the readers to connect with. I think that is the foundation of feeling compelled to read a story itself.
I think you hit the jackpot on that, connecting with the readers. I think I also agree
Exactly,
with that.
exactly. Like, even with my latest novel, Pandemic 2020, when I was writing it, the main idea which I had in my mind was not just to write a very sensationalizing story about the coronavirus outbreak. It was about hitting that nail with the people. It was about writing a story that each and every person will be able to connect with. Like, necessarily, you do not have to be a doctor or a poor boy like Huiking, or let's say a journalist like Yash Sharma in my story, to understand it. You do not have to be like them at all. But when you are reading my latest novel, Pandemic 2020, Rife of the Virus, you will be able to see yourself in it. Why? Because I have written the entire story in such a way that it appears to be like the exact representation of the real world. The characters are fictional, the storylines are not. Like, for example, there is this, I would say, the concluding chapter. It ends with that eve of 5th of April, when all of us in India lit up our houses with diyas and candles to stand united with one another, even when we are separated in our separated houses, right? So that particular instance is, I would say, just a tip of the iceberg of realism and, I would say, the factual correctness which my novel Pandemic 2020 represents. Because, as I said, while writing the story, the only idea which I had in my mind was to make the readers visualize their own self in the book that I'm reading and not just feel intrigued by it just because it is based on COVID-19. So I think that is a very important message which I believe our aspiring writers who are watching this session right now should also take away from the session. That concentrate on creating a story that your readers do not just feel very much mysterious about or feel intrigued about, but they also are able to see their own selves in. Even if your story has dragons or direwolves or vampires or werewolves or whatever it might be.
What has been your best piece of writing advice?
Best piece of writing advice, the
Hmm.
one that I just gave.
Copy and
Focus
paste.
on the real. Yeah, focus on the realism and relatability of your content, and I'm sure the readability itself will improve, even if right now you do not feel that it is very intriguing to read about. Sometimes even the most realistic content is something that the readers feel more interested about rather than a very hectic mystery novel to read about.
How do you manage or take criticism?
I do take criticism in a positive manner because professionally I'm obligated to be very optimistic all of the time. But yeah, even on a psychological level, like jokes apart, I have to say that whenever there is any form of criticism, because of course when I'm saying that, let's say my novel is being internationally acclaimed, so I cannot assure that 100% of people are very much satisfied with it, right? There can be, like, let's say 5% or 7% of readers who do feel that a certain storyline must be changed or whatever it might be. It is just a hypothetical example. Like, even with Harry Potter being so acclaimed, we still can point out a lot many flaws which we would like to change in the story. So that does happen. Criticism is always there, especially with those who are connected with people from all around the world. Now, whenever I am met with criticism, I just remind myself that that particular point of, we can say, uh, critical feedback which I'm receiving, it is just a reminder for myself that no matter where I am in my life right now, there is a great deal of improvement, a great room of enhancement and growth still left, and there will always be. So, I mean, I think we all should take criticism in a very humbling manner, where we remind ourselves that if a person is correcting us, if a person is telling us that, perhaps a lot many people are, let's say, appreciating you on this particular thing, but it still can be improved upon a little bit. You shouldn't be, let's say, get all saddened up by it, or perhaps feel dejected about one person not liking what you have created. Rather, you should focus on it as a reminder for yourself that no matter how big your brain might have become right now, your skull still does have a lot much of room left for the growth of the brain, for the growth of your talent, for the growth of your passion, endeavors, and who you are as a person. So take that criticism as something which reminds you towards the growth which you still can work upon, rather than feeling negative about it.
Yes, I agree with that. And quite a good answer, I must say.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
If you weren't a writer, what do you think you would be?
Okay, public speaker still. That is something which, I mean, I have been passionate about alongside being passionate about literature and writing since as long as I can remember. So surely
Okay, if
that is
not
the
a
answer.
public speaker and writer.
Okay, okay. Now you have put me on a spot, really. Um, I would be like media perhaps, because even right now I am a student of media, yet I am not very sure whether I'm going to pursue that in the form of a career for me in future or not. But then again, this is something which aligns very well with my passion of writing and speaking publicly. So perhaps something in the field of media for sure, though I'm like 18 years old right now, so I don't think if news channels hire 18 years old news anchors, but still I can give it a go. Why not?
You never know. Age is just a number.
Exactly. That is what I preach always.
Any top tips you would like to share with other writers just starting out?
Okay. So, firstly, get inspired from others, but do not copy others. Like, if you are feeling inspired by, let's say, the way in which J.K. Rowling has created a magical story, of course, I appreciate that, and I will be able to feel your passion towards the way in which she has written in the novel that you are writing. But then again, if you are writing on the same kind of bonds, you are writing about the same kind of trio of three youngsters who are figuring out their way, of course I will be able to point that out, and every reader will be able to point that out, that you are not just feeling inspired by a person, but you are completely copying their work. So feel inspired by others, do not copy somebody else. Try to seek your own uniqueness while maintaining a sort of, we can say, inspired ideology about the narrative which you are working upon. So that would be one suggestion. Feel inspired, do not copy anybody else. Secondly, however, my second point would be that don't focus so much on getting things done as soon as possible. Because of course, when you, for example, when you listen to somebody who's saying that, he has written a novel within 1 month, of course, I know that naturally the creative juice will also start flowing in your mind, and you will feel that, why can I not write a book in 1 month, or why don't I write a book in 1 month? And that is absolutely fine if you want to do it. But just because somebody else has done it, or just because it appears to be possible, shouldn't be the criteria that you truly start working upon it. I would rather suggest that you should give the novel which you are writing, or whatever project you are working on, even if it is a dance channel on YouTube or a crash course which you're starting with, give it the sweet amount of time that it deserves. It is not just about you as a person willing to get things done as soon as possible. It is more about the project itself. Like, consider your project as a baby of yours, of your own. You wouldn't hurry up the growth of your own child, right? Then why would you hurry up the growth of the book that you are writing, or the YouTube channel which you are creating? You need to work upon it. You need to, we can say, provide it with the food, provide it with the milk, provide it with the nutrients that it requires to grow over a course of years upon years. So give your project the sweet amount of time that they deserve, be it novel writing or any other creative field that you're passionate about. And then the last bit would be, as I said earlier, don't always focus on, creating a very sensationalizing or a very controversial narrative through your novels or your writing. Rather than work upon writing stories and writing narratives that common masses, particularly common masses, I would say, they are able to connect very well with. They are able to, as I said, visualize their own selves in, and they are able to relate with. So yeah, those would be like my top three suggestions to all the aspiring authors out there.
Some great tips. It's going very smoothly up till now. Let's jump straight into the rapid fire.
Okay.
Your favorite short story.
My favorite short story. Okay.
Tick, 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 tick.
I mean,
Time is ticking.
Salvatore, I believe. Salvatore. It was prescribed in my 12th boards examination, so that is how I recall it. But that is like on the top of my head. So there you go.
Okay. The most unique thing about your writing style.
The most unique thing about my writing style, that there is always a multiplicity of perspectives. Like, whenever I'm writing a novel, even with my second novel, as I said, there are four stories. In my first novel as well, it was not just about the traumas and the horrors of one girl suffering from the disease, but it was more about the multiple people around her also suffering, at least on a psychological level, or from the disease that she was physically suffering from. So that is a very unique aspect which I always add to whatever kind of story I'm writing, that there should be a multiplicity of opinions. If I'm writing about COVID-19, it just cannot be from the perspective of only the doctor or just the poor boy. It has to have a multiplicity of opinions, a multiplicity of perspectives and ideologies narrating that story. So I would say that is the most unique way in which I write stories.
Okay, great. Best thing about your writing.
Best thing about my writing, like,
You
how
cannot
can
say
I
that
say
before
that?
answer.
Okay. Realism, as I said, the realistic dimensions which I always work upon, which I always receive a lot many positive reviews about as well, that the readers are able to see themselves in the story that they are reading. So I think that is something. And once again, like, the fact that most of my readers tell me that they start crying by the end of the novel which I have written. So that is something which I consider as a compliment for me, even if they are crying, because my writing has, you know, got them to down to tears. So of course, that is like a compliment for me. So that would be a good thing about the way in which I write.
I think as a writer, that means that your readers are emotionally connected with your character and your story.
Exactly. Like, one thing I just want to point out over here, this kind of, I remembered all of the sudden, when I had written my first novel, A Celebration in Tribulation. I remember it was last year only. I think I was just through with delivering a talk or something, and it was very late at night. I was in hotel or something, and you wouldn't believe, a teacher whom I hadn't contacted for, like, I guess 2 years or so, but she read my novel She was a teacher from my school. She rang me up at 11:30 or like quarter to 12 at something, and she was, I mean, I could hear that from her voice that she was at the verge of crying. She was really on that stage, and she called me to tell me that, I read your novel and I couldn't stop myself from calling you up, even though I cried like a couple of hours ago only. But I just wanted to reach out to you and tell you how much impacting your story uh, was for me. So that is something which kind of just popped up in my mind all of a sudden when I was speaking about this crying bit.
I think that must have been quite a moment you will never forget in your life.
It definitely
That too
was.
coming from a teacher, it must mean really a lot.
Definitely, surely.
What would the following writers have that you don't? I will be saying the writers' names, and and you can tell about that.
So,
J.K.
uh,
Rowling.
like I have to say exactly what? I did not get the question.
Actually, I'll be saying a writer's name. We have to talk about what trait they have that you don't.
If there is something that they have and I don't, then like how would I even be knowing that?
The, as a writer, you must have read their
Hmm.
works, and you can correlate. Suppose a writer, so and so, what trait they have that you don't. Obviously, every author and writer is different from each and other. Their style,
Yes,
their format.
exactly.
On basis of that, I'm saying.
Okay,
First,
sure.
J.K. Rowling.
Magic. None of my novels have magic whatsoever, and I do not know like how will I work upon that particular theme of everything being so magical and mystical, because I am more of writing about things that are in right now and that you can physically see. But she has done such a remarkable work with writing about magic, so definitely that I believe.
um, and the god of literature, William Shakespeare.
William Shakespeare. A very intriguing language, I believe, which I still haven't quite figured out, even after studying that for, I guess, 5 years or so during my schooling till last year. But still, I feel astonished when I read his work, and it isn't as if it is not understandable. Like if you go into the depths of it, even without a paraphrasing book alongside reading his own work, you will be able to understand it. But then you have to be like completely into his works and reading each and every sentence with a great deal of depth and interest towards what he has written. So I mean, for me it was intriguing. For my classmates it was a, a very hectic thing to get done with every day. So yeah, that would be something.
Yes, the language is quite complex, but when you get into it, his work is simply amazing. I
Exactly,
think in
exactly.
10th, I read one of his works, Julius Caesar.
Okay, yeah.
That was I was literally into it. It was so great.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
And one more, the next one, Charlotte Brontë.
I haven't read any work of her, I have to say.
Okay. The
Yeah.
next one, personally my favorite, Dixon's.
Once again, haven't read.
Disappointed.
Trust me. No, no. The truth is that I will be very honest with you. I am more of a writer than a reader, to be very honest. I am more into narrating my own narratives and concepts that are coming up in my own mind rather than reading somebody else's work. Because, like, time and again in past, I have felt that whenever I get way too much invested into somebody else's work, it kind of starts having an impact on me as a writer. And like I said earlier, that all of us do have to maintain our uniqueness when we are writing any kind of story, whether it is a short story or a long form novel. So this is something which I intentionally try to stay away from, not being way too much influenced in the wrong direction when I'm reading somebody else's work. Like when you talk about J.K. Rowling, of course everybody has read her and has acclaimed her and has been inspired by her. Even I have been. But then again, I am very much selective at this juncture of my life when I am already into writing my own stories, that I only read those people's work whom I know are going to, we can say, further my own journey in some way or the other. They are going to further my way of writing the story in some way, or I should just, abstain from reading somebody else's work and feeling way too much influenced by it. So I think that is the reason why I don't read so much and concentrate more on writing my own stuff.
Okay, I understand you in some sort of way. And the way you have said it, I also agree that I agree with you. And thank you so much for coming here and joining us today. If you would like to know more about Yash Tiwari, stay tuned with the Teen Pop magazine. Can you read it
Thank you so much.
at the ending part?
Yes, yes, sure. And can I speak about my contact details as well?
Yes, sure, you can. No problem.
All right.